We're gonna take a quick but deep dive in these 3 1-hour modules, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the first one really is, I love the safety danger equation because it is working all the time, right? And those cues are shifting all the time. And as a therapist, as a helping professional, as whatever kind of work we're doing, it's our job to be tracking that moment to moment, right? Because it can change in a flash. As I'm sure you know, in your work, you have that moment when everything was going well, and then your client is now having an extreme response, right? The balance has shifted. There are more cues of danger. They outweigh the cues of safety. And we look for, regulating cues of safety through the 3 pathways of neuroception, which are the internal, so what's happening in the body, which is where you're contacting, in the environment, and we talked a bit about that, and then in the field between, in the relational communication that our nervous systems are having. So yes, we want to also be saying things, but really it's a beneath the level of conscious awareness communication that's going on. And so when something comes in to disrupt the moment, my nervous system tells me that, right? I mean, you get a cue immediately, maybe through your hands, but your nervous system is telling you, oops, something just happened.
Yeah.
Right. And then my job is to stop. And in my work, I would explicitly talk about that with my client. You might decide to or not, but to say, wow, something just came in and interrupted the flow we were in. And I wonder if we might bring awareness to what that was, for 2 reasons. One, because I'd like it not to happen again, right? So I need to know what it is in order to reduce it or remove it. And then we want to bring in some cues of safety so that we can come back into that connection. And so that's that balance that's always going on. And truly the easiest way to work with that is to keep a running list, right? And clients find that really helpful, right? Because then a client could come in and let you know, here's, or you and the client could do together, here's what we've realized about your system so far. Right, that's great learning for you as the therapist. So here are the things that your system does not appreciate. Here are the things that it really longs for, right? So that's going to help me in my work.
Right.
And your client's beginning to get to know their body in a way where they can then let you know, right, what's leading me more into connection, and what feels a little more as if it's, leading me out of my body or out of connection. I think that's really important information.
Yeah. I mean, it might sound strange, but do you ever deliberately bring in cues of unsafety to kind of stimulate a situation or to see where the edges are?
I think I would say yes, but I think the languaging is probably different. What I would do is I would go to sort of the limit of where I'm still anchored in my ventral, but I'm using a lot of sympathetic energy, for instance,
right,
so that they can get the flavor of what it feels like to be in connection with that energy, but still feeling safe.
Yeah.
And the other as well, I can bring in the flavor of dorsal not really being here, which can feel incredibly dangerous to another nervous system, because where did you just go, right? So I can play with that, all the while letting my client know we're just playing with these energies so that we can get a sense of where the edges are for you, because we're always looking for the growing edge, right? That's where the work happens, at the edges.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure my clients know that I am explicitly doing this and that I am still anchored in safety in ventral, and we're experimenting. So it is an experiment, because if I don't explicitly do that, my clients are going to then begin to look at me as a danger, right, rather than a resource. Right. So I think it's useful to do because we need that information. Our clients need that information. Yeah. And we have to make sure we make it safe enough so that the nervous system doesn't mistrust us.
Yeah. And you mentioned about bringing in cues of safety. I mean, how do you do that on a practical level? What are the kind of things that you do to do that?
Well, I love that you're actually seeing people in person, because it's so much easier when we're doing that, right? Because online is a little harder, but it's your prosody, it's your tone of voice, it's the actual words you're using, it's the energy you're sending. It may be how close or far you stay from a client, so that you're in the place that their nervous system says that's just right.
Yeah.
Right. We're honoring what the nervous system is telling us. Right. And that begins to bring in more cues of safety, because for many clients, either they've disconnected from what their body is saying, which may be what you get a lot of, people who are just they're not attuned. They can't come into their body.
Yeah.
In my world with complex trauma survivors, they've creatively disconnected from their body because it's an unsafe place to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we say we're listening to what your nervous system is telling us, and we're going to honor what the message is, that is a lovely cue of safety, right? And often something that's unfamiliar, right? But basically, your best bet at bringing in more cues of safety is your presence, your ventral regulated presence, and your eye gaze, your tone of voice, your movements, all of that. Yeah.
And sometimes that's quite challenging, isn't it, for a therapist, when I don't know, maybe you've just had an argument with somebody, or I don't know,
right. It's one of those days when, what I tell people in my trainings is, when you come to a session with a client, your responsibility is to be anchored in ventral, or at least to be anchored enough in ventral so that you're sending cues of safety. And if you can't do that, don't see that client that moment. Mm-hmm. It's as clear as that. If you cannot be a ventral regulated energy when you're working with me, then you are doing more harm than you could possibly do good. And it's hard for people to understand that, because you think, well, I still know what to do. I still know how to manipulate, the doesn't matter, right? For me, I still know what to say, doesn't matter, because the nervous system is sending out warnings, and that's what your client's going to be receiving. And that, I think, is really important for us to remember. So we have to get good at knowing, I can put that away, that disaster of a morning, I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to come and anchor in ventral so I can do this. Yeah. Right. So that's our work to do. We have to get good at being able to do that.
Yeah. And I suppose all of us have various kind of techniques, don't we? Like, feeling, I feel my feet on the ground, or I might do some abdominal breathing, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, they're body techniques that a lot of people use, breath or feeling here. There's imagery. Yeah. There are intentions, there are mantras that I can write and use. There are all sorts of ways to do that. And what I like to do is have people have a variety of ways, because sometimes, my visualization just isn't going to get me there. I need something else, right? I need a menu of things to choose from.